Hey y'all, welcome back to another video, another day of Vlogmas. It's day 19, we're getting so close to the end of Vlogmas. So exciting, it's almost Christmas. I just watched a movie called Violent Night because I am doing a ranking video soon of horror movies that are like Christmas themed because I thought that would be fun to do for like a Vlogmas Christmas video. I'm really into horror movies, and so I was like, oh, that'll be fun. You know, there's a few that I know of that are like pretty fun, pretty cool. So I was like, let me watch one of these new ones, Violent Night. And Violent Night's DK Harbour or David Harbour, I don't know which one he's going by right now, who is, what's his name? Oh no. Hopper from Stranger Things. And I just think he's a really great actor. And he's really fun. And when I saw he was gonna be Santa, I was like, oh, perfect. He's gonna be a great Santa. But I was like not prepared for this movie. It's nuts. And I like movies that are like kind of crazy, like kind of off the wall and like weird. It's part of why I like horror movies so much, is like anything can go in a horror movie. Anything's allowed. And often very weird, interesting things happen in horror movies that can't happen in other genres because genres have limitations on like what the audience will tolerate or what they think is like acceptable behavior for people to do. And horror movies are pretty loosey-goosey with like most of those rules. So you often get like really wild and interesting plot decisions from characters, or like just interesting things happening that don't happen in other movies. But this was just so much. I was not prepared at all. Okay, sorry if you can hear my computer, but I had to read you the synopsis of the movie because it's nuts. I assumed from the name Violent Night and from just the kind of aggressive photo of Santa that was on the cover that it was going to be like evil Santa. And I was like, sure, he's really mad that everyone's being so naughty. The world is corrupt, you know, etc. No. The synopsis is, when a group of mercenaries attack the estate of a wealthy family, Santa Claus must step in to save the day and Christmas. So he is like fighting people who are trying to steal from this wealthy family who has an exorbitant amount of money in cash that they've gotten from like the government to give to oil barons. I don't know. It was a lot. It's an intense amount of plot and just bizarre. It's interesting. They're carrying on this theme, I didn't realize, of we had a lot of shows and movies and like various media recently that's been very critical of like the uber rich, basically, right? So things like Succession or like White Lotus, that kind of stuff. So they're kind of carrying on that with this movie. So that's kind of fun. That's been touched on a little bit in horror movies recently. Ready or Not is the one that comes to mind most readily as far as being critical of the rich, but you know, fun for that. Although they are the protagonists here technically, so I guess it's not quite as critical. It's just kind of like, look how goofy and weird this is. So yeah, that's what's happening there. The most bizarre thing in this movie is like tone. The tone is really weird. I don't know if I consider it a horror movie. I guess so, just because it's so violent. It's violent in a way that like horror movies are violent, that usually action movies are not violent. Action movies usually have a lot of violence, but they don't have gratuitous violence. And often it's like explosions or like a lot of punching or something instead of like being very bloody specifically. And this movie's very bloody, and it's also very creative, the way that people are being taken out. And that's a kind of a hallmark of horror movies, is that they are, you know, you can only do so many times the like classic slasher kind of stuff. So they're like, let's reach outside the box and find something else fun. Especially when you're doing a movie like this that's so highly you know, specific as far as like the theme, that it's so Christmassy that they're like, okay, how many Christmas items can we use to enact this, you know, violence that we're committing? So that's fun in that way. And that's very like horror movie-esque to be like, what can we do with this? Kind of like in the vein of like Final Destination of like, how weird can we make this? You know, like that's kind of the point of those movies. So yeah, but the tone is strange because for a lot of the movie, it like is clearly trying to tug at your heartstrings and make you be like, aw. And for a decent amount of it, like a few of the scenes, it's like really trying to be straight and earnest in like, just like, oh, what a sweet Christmas movie vibe, which is strange because then, you know, it immediately follows with like people being injured severely with like nutcrackers or something, which is like kind of funny and kind of disturbing, but not wholesome in any way. So it's like, it's got a weird wholesome line while still generally being like kind of goofy and then just like intensely violent. So the tone is bizarre for sure. Actually, speaking of media about like rich families, if you've seen Fall of the House of Usher, that's one of the newer ones, that's also horror themed. Similarly, the like daughter, or the like granddaughter, basically the youngest one of this family, clan, whatever, is like kind of the only likable person. And similarly to that show, that's the same, you know, that it's like the granddaughter is the likable one. The newest generation, she's like good. She seems like a good person compared to the rest of these, you know, people in the family. So that's interesting. I didn't really realize that until I was thinking about it. But anyway, yeah, tone is weird. Violence is high. And just like, there's... It's too long. It's like an hour and 54 minutes. It doesn't need to be that long. It starts with Santa in a bar, like getting wasted. And then he's like, don't worry, I got the reindeer do most of the driving and stuff. And then he like vomits on a woman from the sky. It's a whole thing, really. And yeah, I just like, I'm not sure what the point was. I don't know who the audience is for this movie, because it's so strange. Like, clearly children should not be watching this movie, but then it like somehow also wants you to be like, oh, well, that's sweet. And I'm just like, that's not really what horror fans do. We're kind of like, show us the violence, show us the drama, show us the wild nonsense that's happening. And it is wild nonsense. So they deliver on that. They've got some fun uses of Christmas items. You know, they did a classic tying them up with Christmas lights, which they also do in Better Watch Out. So that's fun. They tried to do like a garrote with like tinsel. It doesn't work, but that's fun. This guy gets exsanguinated by Santa teleporting up a chimney in the middle of nowhere. There's just like a fireplace with a chimney and he could teleport through them, and he brings the guy with him, and then the guy just like, and has no more blood. And it's a lot. It's a lot. It's intense. They do one thing I really appreciate, which like everybody keeps being like, how is Santa doing these things? And the answer is just like magic. I don't know how it works. It's just magic. And I love when they're like, here's the explanation, we refuse to say further. Because I think some movies get bogged down in like trying to explain to you very specifically why things work. And I just think that's almost always a bad idea. I think it kind of ruins the mystery. It kind of ruins the mystique and like the intrigue in kind of what's going on when you explain it too hard. And it comes too close to like factual things, and then it's easier to fact check instead of just being like, it's magic, you know, Santa Claus, etc. They also give Santa a weird backstory that it's like he was like a Viking, and it like shows a flashback of him with a hammer, like, you know, just taking people out. And I'm like, okay, sure. Why not, I guess? But strange. And Santa simultaneously is like really intense and like kind of a, you know, BA dude. And then other times he's like a bumbling buffoon and like really clumsy, or like really kind of like goofy and weird. So even his like character is like bizarre, you know, like I kind of expected him to be like kind of bumbling and goofy, and then like, you know, stuff hits the fan and he's like, okay, now we gotta buckle down. I gotta be intense, like aggressive Santa. I gotta use all my magical strength to get out of here or whatever, save the people, you know, help everybody. But yeah, it doesn't, no, he kind of just cycles back and forth between being like, ooh, BA, and then like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing and he's just being weird and goofy and confusing. So it's a little weird, but you know, I guess they wanted to keep that like energy throughout of him being like kind of cutesy, I guess. But it is kind of bizarre. I don't really get it. The main villain's backstory is very funny to me though, that he's like, when I was a kid, we didn't get good presents one year because my dad got laid off or something, I don't remember, but he didn't have a job and so we didn't get good presents. So then he like Grinched a different family. He's like, so I went over there and I stole all their presents, which like, maybe you steal things that nobody likes. What if they only got like hyper specific presents for their like niche interests, you know? Like they're just like, oh, I have a croquet mallet, really nice croquet mallet that was not useful to me, and a really good whittling set, and that's just lovely. But he's like, I went over there and I stole all this stuff, and then the grandpa caught me, and then he fell down the stairs and he, you know, passed away at the hospital. And I'm like, sure, that sounds so believable when you tell it that way. But like truly to be like the origin story of my becoming a criminal was that I had a bad Christmas and so I don't like Santa Claus is pretty funny. I do like that. And I also appreciate the main villain is so refusing to believe that this man is actually Santa Claus. His individual henchmen are like folding like a house of cards the minute he mentions like, I got you a Huffy bike in '82, and he's like, oh, he knows me, that's Santa. Like for real. And then, you know, like say with like the lady, he mentions something, she's like, oh, maybe he is Santa. The main henchman guy's like, or the main guy I guess is like, no, like what, are you kidding? He tells you one thing, he guesses right on one thing, and you immediately believe he's Santa. And I'm like, as much as they are right obviously that he is Santa, because the twist in every movie with Santa in it is that the guy is Santa. It is funny because I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's being pretty reasonable about this. Yeah, I do think maybe you have a second thought and consider if that truly is Occam's razor. And in this case, it is, because he starts doing magic and stuff. And so I'm like, fair enough. But I appreciate a skeptic for a minute, you know, we deserved that. And even though we know the correct answer, I don't like when the characters have all the knowledge that I do, because, you know, that's the fun of dramatic irony, is that I know things that they don't know. So I appreciate a character who like refuses to give in to like a weird theory, even though it's correct, because it just doesn't seem correct. Why would it be correct? A lot of the writing in this was interesting too, like a lot of lines you're like, oh, yikes, or like, these people are just not great, which is an interesting choice. It's interesting, you know, given kind of like the Scrooge narrative, and like the point of Scrooge is to like convert them to be like good people, that they are like kind of doing a similar thing with like having this rich family and then like whatever, except for they're the protagonists, right? Like generally, they need saving. And so it's interesting watching them also just not get better, like generally. One of the sons knows where the money is and he stole it, like the main character for us besides Santa. He stole the money and hid it somewhere else because he was just gonna steal from his mom and like run away and have the money, because he thought that would fix his marriage. And his wife is like, literally the reason we're fighting is because you keep, you know, talking about your mom's money, and you thought the answer was taking your mom's money. And he's like, that's fair now that you put it that way. That makes sense that that's not the best idea. Which reminds me, this is a good example of the like weird heartstring pulling they're doing in this movie that's like aggressively violent. That like, there's one part where, you know, the little girl, like their daughter is like on the phone or like on a walkie-talkie or something, and she's like talking to Santa. He's not actually talking to her yet. And she says like all she wants for Christmas is for her parents to like get back together, basically, because they're like fighting a lot, which is like very sad. And her parents are listening, right? And you're like, depressing. And you're like, oh, I hope her parents get better, because clearly she can see something's going on, and that's sad. But it's like that, and then Santa hitting someone with a sledgehammer multiple times, you know, like to the cranium. So it's just a lot, you know, it's just bizarre. It was fun. Like I have a tier list made up, and I'm gonna put it, this is a secret for people who watch this video before they watch the tier list. I am planning on putting it in like pretty good but weird, because truly, if I don't think it's amazing, but I still think it's pretty good, it's probably just that it's strange. Like that I don't think it's like, wow, this is one I want to watch every year for fun. But yeah, it was a lot. There's a lot going on, and I just was so confused. I was confused what the point was. I was confused what the plan was. I don't know what the moral is, I guess. They're like, believe that Santa's real, I guess. Is the moral? I don't know. Because, like, they don't suffer any consequences. They're like rich people for doing these crimes or whatever. Really? I think they burn the money, so, like, they can't give the money to, you know, whatever oil barons or whatever they were supposed to for the government secretly. But yeah, I don't know. They don't get better. You know, like Scrooge gets better. They don't get better. The Grinch gets better. They don't get better. So I don't know. It was just like, just a classic Christmas movie about, you know, familial greed, and the rich, and how they need to believe more in Santa Claus. That's just, I think that's it. That's the moral. So if you're looking for a Christmas movie that is like action-packed and a lot of creative ways to injure people or take them out, I recommend it. It's interesting. The little girl mentions Home Alone, and I do appreciate she does like kind of do a Home Alone vibe. I do like how Home Alone, especially for horror movies, has become kind of a staple calling card, because what that kid does in Home Alone is horrifying, and definitely could have taken those men out. So yeah, I think it's fun. It was a, you know, it's a time. I think it's worth a watch at least one time, especially since it's free on Prime right now. So, you know, go for it. If you need it, if you're like, we really need a Christmas movie right now to watch, and you don't mind some just, you know, decently bloody situations, you'll like it, I think. Anyway, I just finished it, and I had to just spill my guts about it, because wow, it was just a lot. Hope you're having a good day, and hope to see you in the next video. I'm not sure what it will be, but should be fun. See you later. Bye.